As I do my best to tailor my content for this podcast based on input from listeners, the issue of safety for women came up with a friend of mine, and I went on a mission to find the right person to deliver the message on this topic. We're traveling again for business and pleasure. We go to the mall, we go to the grocery store, perhaps you meet friends out for dinner, or you have a date with someone that you met online. But what about the safety of our children? Many are going off to work in new cities, they study abroad, or they're venturing off to college for the first time. No matter where you are in life, please listen to these friendly tips and reminders about awareness as my next guest shares her story of how she got into the safety business. Health, wellness, career, family, life, and the better side of 50. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Hello, listeners. My guest today is safety expert Lorna Selig. Lorna is the owner of the Safe for Life company based in Calgary, Alberta. Her first career was in the disability services area where she was offering support and supervision to women with disabilities who were raising their children, which I think is fantastic. Her transition into the safety world is an interesting one. So I'm actually going to let her tell you more about that. But you will see that she has a great passion for women and safety, and also including the safety of our children. Lorna, welcome to the Asking for a Friend podcast.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. And I intentionally sought you out as an expert for the show because I received requests to talk about women's safety. So kudos. You're the one I found, and I'm so excited.
That's great.
We had a really good pre-talk over the weekend, and I think we've got some great topics to cover. But first of all, tell the listeners a little bit about how you got into this business.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So my story is, I think, fairly common. The more I talk and tell my story, the more I hear that it is very, very similar in experience to many, many other women. So growing up in small town, rural community, just prior to my 17th birthday, had an incident where I was assaulted. I was at a outdoor party, wandered away from the group for a period of time, and was picked up from behind, literally grabbed, lifted off the ground from behind by someone that I knew. I didn't know him well, but I knew who he was. He tossed me into the back of a car, and initially in that situation, I didn't really realize, I don't think, the significance and the magnitude and the severity of what was actually happening. At the ripe old age of 16, I thought I knew everything. I was the smartest cat in the room. I was Teflon, right? I mean, like many other 16-year-old girls and 17, 18, 14, 15, whatever, you're kind of invincible. And as was I. And so what a humbling experience and a frightening, traumatic, scary experience to find myself underneath a massive person in the backseat of a car. By sheer luck, I had a big belt buckle on, at the big belt on that evening, which made the grabbing and groping quite rough and quite difficult. I didn't know what to do. So I did nothing for what seemed like forever. And suddenly it occurred to me that I could get my feet up and pin this person against the other door while I escaped out the back seat passenger side. And in the whole time this was going on, had just the massive and frightening experience of that adrenaline download where I'm shaking. I feel like I've got styrofoam in my head. I've got tunnel vision. It's just a whole physiological response that happens. So I did what any central Alberta rural girl would do at the age of 16 is I absolutely did nothing but dust myself off and walk back to the party. I never told a soul, Michelle, never brought it up again for a whole bunch of reasons. Mostly those reasons in and around I felt like I was to blame. I should have done something different. Maybe I should have walked this way or wore that instead, or whatever those list of things that I could have done differently. My family was quite protective. I quite honestly feared that if I told what had happened, I would probably never again for the rest of my life be allowed to go out past 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
All of those things that at the age of 16 seem so huge and significant and important all rolled through my head. So again, I did nothing, never told a soul. Fast forward a few more years, 6, 7, 8 years, I'm about 25 and I was at a party. I was living in Calgary at the time, which is a city of about 1 million people. I used a valet car service. And then as I was going to pick my vehicle up by myself, later in the evening, a similar situation happened. Again, I was sort of thrown up against the side of my vehicle and there was kind of a grabbing and groping and just some verbal assault going on at the same time. And I managed to get away from that and get in my car and head back for home. After that second incident, it occurred to me, holy smokes, I got to do something different. This here can't happen again. This is traumatic. So at the time, I was working in the city and doing family and community social support work, working with young women, young teens who, interestingly enough, reported having similar events, similar experiences. So we went about doing a bit of exploring and research and finding out some self-defense strategies, books. We attended a couple of classes. And then when my youngest son was attending a kindergarten or an early elementary school program that was all around personal safety, I attended that program. Of course, it's something that was in the front of mind for a long time. So I attended the program, and after it was finished, just with an hour-long session teaching for these kids, I had goosebumps and just the lights went on all over the place and the bells were ringing. And I discovered this really was, I needed to contact the owner. So I phoned her up. She was a City of Calgary police officer. She had created the program. I said, oh my gosh, I've got to come work for you. This is amazing. I see the transformation in my son and the other children in there, and I got to do this work. 10 years go by. I'm working and training with her. We're in schools and businesses and community centers doing this training. And then she came to me about 8.5 years ago and she said, Lorna, I'm going to divest myself of the curriculum part of my business. And I want to know if you want to buy it. And of course, like many well-seasoned entrepreneurs or not, I said, oh, okay, sure, I'll buy it. That's kind of how I ended up with Safe for Life, personal safety and self-defense. So I did a bit of a rebrand, updated some of the marketing materials, and poof, here I am 8 years later, still loving this. So we go into schools, we go into businesses, we work lots with realtors, we work with travel agents, we work with community organizations, women's groups, teaching this message of empowerment and doing a few simple and basic things in our day-to-day lives really can change the course of our future. That sounds like such a cliche, but it's so true because how we show up, how we react to threat and risk really can change the way we move through the rest of our lives. I absolutely love this work. When I see the look on the faces of people leaving our classes, honestly, it fills my soul because I see the change, I see the shift, and I see the empowerment and confidence that they walk out of that room with. I know that they have the skills to protect themselves.
That's fantastic and how rewarding. And so when you speak to these corporations, you're probably talking about travel safety, correct?
For sure. Yep. Lots of times. Yes.
What kind of tips? Because I'm starting to travel more again.
Yeah.
It's, post-COVID. And I feel like I hope my guard isn't down. So I probably need a reminder of what I should be paying attention to.
Sure. I typically, and my team, our instruction is often around walk around in a state of awareness, walk around in a state of alert. It's like being in the driver's seat of a car, Michelle. When you are in the driver's seat of a car, you move through traffic in a very, very different way than you do in a passenger seat or in the back seat. You're noticing what's going on around you. And when you are traveling, and in fact, when you are anywhere, when you're out in a community away from the comfort and safety of your home, you need to be showing up in that state of alert and awareness. Notice what's going on around you. When you're traveling, Michelle, try to blend in as much as you can, right? Walk in and amongst the crowd, all the while being alert to, how does this feel? Do I feel safe, or do I feel like there's a threat or a risk? And again, when it's coming to this experience and this way of showing up, not from the position of fear and worry that you're going to get jumped or there's a bad guy hiding behind every tree, but more from the position of power and confidence, right? If we are showing up knowing perhaps where our exits are, with some strategies of how to escape and how to know when it's time to leave a scenario, we can be in that environment in a very, very different way than if we are afraid or if we're oblivious. So when you are traveling, a really important tip, Michelle, photocopy all your super important documents. Everything from your credit card to your passport, even your debit card if you're using that. Make photocopies of all that stuff and travel with your photocopies. Leave the important documents, the real documents, the actual documents, back at the hotel in a safe, in a locked box. Now, we often are so concerned about protecting our important stuff that we forget that we ourselves are far more important than our stuff. So if someone is to grab our bag or grab a backpack, if we know our passport's in there and our Visa card, we're going to fight for that. But guess what? That can take us down a big old path of, not only are we then being robbed, but we're also then being assaulted, physically assaulted, and oftentimes dragged somewhere where we probably cannot get the help that we need. So leave your important documents at home. Travel with the photocopies. Then we're far less attached to that stuff and seeing that as important. So mix in amongst the crowd. Know where your exits are. If you feel awkward and uncomfortable in a certain situation, step back from it. Doesn't mean you have to pack up and go home. Maybe it just means that you move to a different part of the sidewalk or you move to a different spot on the bus.
Yeah. Use your gut, right?
Use your gut. Your intuition and your instinct is a lifesaver. It's there for a reason.
Hotels. We talk about, okay, automatically, you walk into your room, lock your door. Any other hotel tips that you can share?
Absolutely. As much as possible when you're booking your hotel, book on the second, third, fourth floor. Stay out of that main floor lobby kind of area, any place that can be accessed from even the outside grounds. Book your rooms higher up. If at all possible, arrive at your location, at your hotel in daylight hours. That way, if you show up there and something feels off or something is amiss, you can check out, take your loss for that night if you need to, but find another place where you feel safer, where you feel suitable. It's the worst thing to arrive in a location at 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night and recognizing as you're pulling up to your hotel and being dropped off by your taxi, you thinking, oh my gosh, how can I even possibly think about staying here? We've all had those situations. I've certainly been in a few of those where I'm going, oh boy, don't think I want to be here for long. So if you arrive during the day, you can fix that right off the hop, right?
Exactly. I have a story for you.
Oh, good.
A couple months ago, I was in a hotel. I was checking in, went into my room. First thing I did, because I was on the first floor, I checked the window and the window was unlocked and there was a wood pallet right outside the window that someone could step on.
Ooh.
And I immediately took my bag, went out to the front desk and said, I'm not staying in this room. And they did move me to another floor, but you do want to make sure those windows are locked.
Absolutely.
If you have to stay on a ground floor.
Yeah. Good for you, though, Michelle, for going back to the front desk and asking for another room. How many times do we sort of say, oh, gosh, it's fine. What am I worried about? Doesn't matter. It's your responsibility to protect yourself.
It creeped me out.
Yes.
I would not have slept all night knowing that something could have possibly happened. So I had to move.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about living alone, or you have a partner that travels a lot. What kind of tips do you have?
I truly believe in the circle of friends. If we have people in our life that we know are alone, they live alone, their partner is gone often, I really believe in this notion of setting up a check-in system. And potentially it would be 2, maybe 3 times a day where you're just checking in, code word, whatever that might be. Maybe it's just, hey, how you doing? Or maybe it's a thumb up, thumbs down, whatever it is that you're wanting to do over text. Keeping track of each other. I think we as a community and as a deliberate and conscious community have a lot of work that we can still do to make sure that we are protecting ourselves by protecting each other. So if you know of somebody that lives alone, or if it's you that lives alone, reach out and set yourself up with that connecting community. That is such a empowering and supportive way to be there for each other, and then to recognize that somebody is also there with us. Again, it's the usual pieces as well, keeping your doors and your windows locked, use air conditioning or a fan instead of opening your windows at night, especially on those ground floor places. I would get a camera attached. They've got all kinds of video and surveillance equipment out there now. My gosh, it's amazing how much that can track and that can record. Absolutely, absolutely important. Have your doorbell connected to your phone. That way you can check on it right from where you are. You don't have to deliberately go up, walk to the door to check to see who's there. I think the other thing would be that I would probably suggest is to leave your lights on in a differing timer. So maybe the kitchen light's on from, I don't know, pick a time, 6 o'clock at night till 10:30, and living room light is on sometime after that, and make it variable, change it up so it doesn't look like it's all scheduled. But I think the biggest thing, quite honestly, would be to set yourself up with a circle of friends, let people know when you're alone, and recognize among your little circle that it's okay to reach out, even if it's 12:30 at night and you're just going to bed and you've got the creeps about something. Set that up with a friend that you also know is up late, and just have that open communication with each other.
And I think maybe let's talk about dating then,
Mm,
because some women are dating right now, whether it's internet dating or even a setup.
mhm.
How do we approach that in terms of our personal safety?
Again, we are responsible for protecting ourselves. And so this is a very, very passionate piece of this work for me. And again, it goes back to this circle of friends. If we are going out on a date, we need to let somebody know where we're going, who we're going to be with, when we're expected to be home, what this person's name is, first name and last name. Text that to somebody. Also text their contact information. Let people know where you are. If you are going out on a date and this is potentially the first date or even the second or third, make sure that you are meeting in a public place. I wouldn't go to a place like a park where you're going for a walk together. I would go to a coffee shop. Find yourself in a Starbucks or go someplace where there's other people. If you have even a hint of the heebie-jeebies or the red flags or the ick factor, you need to take responsibility for yourself and get up and leave. And when we look back on this stuff, that ick factor, you're laughing about that, Michelle, but we know what that is, right?
Were you on one of my Match.com dates many years ago? Oh
Isn't
my
that funny?
God.
But everybody knows what the ick factor is, right? And that's the moment where you kind of go, okay, time to go. Because if we sit there through the ick factor, we can rationalize it and make sense out of it, when in fact, that probably is that flag or that hammer hitting you over the head saying, get out of here, right?
So if they're talking about cuddling on the first date, it's time to cut your
Yeah.
losses.
Yes, absolutely.
You and I can talk about our dating woes on internet later,
Exactly.
another time. No, this is great. I will tell you, not just me, but plenty of my friends have been in a parking lot somewhere and someone kind of on the creepy side, they see them walking directly toward them and they know they're not coming because they know them. They're coming for alternative reasons.
Yeah.
What do we do in that case?
So first of all, whenever you are in your car, and we all do this, you hop in your car and you turn your phone on. Who texted me in the last, 40 minutes since I've been in Walmart or whatever, right? So when you get in your car, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to lock the doors. If somebody approaches your car, if somebody is making a beeline for your car, raps on your outside window, use your horn. Lay on your horn. And I can tell you how well this works. Oh, this is a few years back when my kids were still living with me. Thank God they're off the payroll, so they're on their own. I was dropping my oldest son off at a friend's house in downtown Calgary. It was a bit of a roughish kind of neighborhood. The whole community was kind of being refurbished and all that good stuff. Anyway, I dropped him off. I was sort of parked in the middle of the street because I wanted to watch him walk into the building and heading up the elevator. So I was kind of parked in the middle of the street. And on the other side of me is a group. There was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 people, and they were street people. So, kind of sleeping on the street and all that stuff. And they were coming. The one woman was walking towards my car, and she had a fellow who was coming along with her some ways back. And she came up to my car and she wanted money, or she wanted whatever she wanted. And I laid on the horn and just honk, 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 4, 5, 6 times, and then just laid on it. And she just sort of threw up her hands and started walking away. And the guy that was following her didn't even make it to my car. And he just turned and went the other way as well. Again, this is about attracting this attention, right? Letting others know that something's going on. And in fact, when the horn's going off, my son, he was climbing up this set of stairs and he kind of looked out the window and he's going, thumbs up, thumbs down. He's saying, what are you doing? Right. Of course, he knows me and knows I could probably manage in that situation. Just the fact that he noticed, and probably everybody else on the street noticed as well. I mean, when there's a horn going off, people look, right?
So create attention.
Totally.
If you're not in your car, you are in a parking lot, you're either walking towards your car or away from your car, and you find someone approaching you, just make attention, like
absolutely.
Wave your arms, wave them off, whatever. Okay.
Yep. Scream, shout, yell, stop, back up, back off, whatever it is, get your hands up in front of you. Let people know that you're trying to get this person away from you. Fight back, Michelle, if you need to. If they approach, if they're too close and they're right inside your space, right inside your bubble, feel free to smack them in the face. My favorite places, honestly, for vulnerable spots, targets, if you will, the groin. Go for the groin every time. Bring that knee up. If they're right in close, bring that knee up and give them a shot in the groin. If you can't reach the groin or whatever, punch to the throat or a punch to the bottom of the nose very, very often will be effective enough, all the while you're shouting no and giving them a shot to the throat. Chances are they're going to leave you be at that stage. They're going to see you as less of a target, which is the intention, right? When we walk around in that state of alert with deliberateness and purposefulness and confident, we don't look like an easy target. We don't look like an easy victim. And as soon as we come back at a perpetrator or an offender with the energy of yelling, screaming, shouting, and striking back, they're not prepared for that. That's not part of their, I'm going to attack this woman plan, right? They want a nice, compliant little victim, that which I believe never, ever, ever women should be. And they aren't when they leave our programs.
Yeah. Being at the grocery store, you are very aware that someone is following you.
Right.
That seems to be happening more and more often.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. So here's my strategy for that. Pull your phone out. turn around, snap a picture of that person, and go stand at the checkout. Let them know there, somebody's following me. And quite honestly, in that moment, I would be shouting as well. I'd turn around, take a picture, stop, why are you following me? And then I would be running as fast as I could to the checkout where I know there are people, right?
And then would you then have them walk you out to your car?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Or certainly wait until security was called and something was managed with this person that was following me. And maybe they just like the same things I do. I don't know. Maybe that's why they're following me. But we all know it's that, well, it's the ick factor. I can feel that something in this exchange, something when this person is in proximity to me doesn't feel right. So I'm going to leave that situation. Again, we need to get over this thought that hopefully that perpetrator or that creep's going to realize that I'm uncomfortable and they're going to leave, right? They're not going to leave, right? If they have an ulterior motive to create you as their target, they don't care if they're making you feel uncomfortable. That's the whole point. And so our response needs to not be standing there hoping they get it. Our response needs to be take charge of that situation, be on purpose right there and leave. I don't need to stand there and hope that this guy doesn't grab me. I need to make it happen so that he won't grab me. I need to leave that environment. And again, it doesn't mean that I go running out onto the street necessarily. It just means that I get out of that specific location and find another person that can help me and support me. If he grabs me and I need to give him a shot and a punch, I'll do that.
Yeah, if they get in your personal space, that's when you have that ability. And I love the idea of taking the picture.
Yeah.
We always have our phones with us. There's no reason why we couldn't do that.
Totally.
When you and I first spoke, we talked about our children.
Yeah.
Many of the women in this age group either have children that they're sending off to college or they're moving them to big cities for either an internship or for their permanent job. I know as a mom, you never stop worrying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And was curious what your practical tips are for protecting our children. And this goes with girls and boys. I don't think that there's a dividing line between the two.
No, there is no dividing line. Now, obviously, I think it happens more to females, but it happens as well to young men too. The very first suggestion that I have is to have these massive, hard, uncomfortable, difficult conversations with our kids. And the best time to start having these big conversations with our kids is when they are toddlers. Keep your private parts private. Don't let that babysitter wipe your bum or give you a bath. Those kinds of simple, basic conversations, and continue those conversations right up through childhood, adolescence, so that when we are sitting with our teenager ready to drop them off at university or at their job or on the plane, it's not the first time we've had this conversation about the hard stuff, right? Well, statistics show that the first 3 months that a teenager leaves home is what they call the red zone. The statistics for assault, rape, any kind of physical or sexual interference happens in those first 3 months. And those are the months, let's think about it. All of a sudden, you, as a teenager, you got all this freedom. Wow, like, what do I do with this? And there's no regulation. And as we all know, our social brains are not developed until at least 25. And so when we drop an 18 or 17 or 19-year-old teenager off, their minds have not yet caught up to their blossoming body. And that makes for a whole train wreck when it comes to how do I make decisions. There's all kinds of social activities going on. There's all kinds of attention from all these new people and this need for acceptance. And because of that, our young people do things that they would not have done had they been at home. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to lock our kids up in the basement and never send them out, obviously, but it means that we need to give them the information about what kind of scary stuff goes on, because with information, we are empowered and we can do things a little bit more deliberately and a little bit more consciously. It is when we walk into these situations without having a clue. It's like me at that outdoor party when I was 16. Like, oh, what? I had no sort of sense of the dangers and the risks. I just didn't. And part of that was because I didn't really have those conversations. I would really suggest give your young people the gift of a self-defense and personal safety course. They will develop the physical skills there, but also the mental and emotional skills that they need to just be able to tune into an environment so that they have a bit more awareness. It is so, so, so important. And when it comes to, we had talked, Michelle, I'll just mention this here, we had talked before about kind of party safety and this whole craziness that's going on right now with drugging drinks and putting, like, I don't even know what they're like. There's way too many of them to even think about what they are, but there's such an amazing solution or remedy for that. And that is buying a cup with a lid on it and a straw. You go up to the bar and get your drink, pour your drink into this cup, put the lid on it, put the straw in it, and have it with you. If you drop it on the floor, it's not going to break because it's plastic. It'll roll around. You won't even spill your drink. But have a cup with a lid on it. Starbucks sells them all the time, as does Walmart. Buy one of these for your child and your child's friends and make it a cool thing to do. It's so, 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 so important.
And I can't tell you, my kids are out of college, but they have told me stories of friends who have been roofied at parties and at bars. And as a parent, we didn't deal with this when we were in college. That was just not even thought of. But I told my girls, you put your cup down, you're at risk. I wouldn't pick that cup.
You don't go back to it.
I wouldn't go back to it.
Yeah.
And we need to be arming our children with these very basic skills. But the big one is you don't go home with someone you don't know either.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes back to, Michelle, that circle of friends, right? Get to know the people on your floor, your roommate, the person in the room next to you, and start that communication system right off the hop. Let people know where you're going. Don't go home with somebody that you don't know, male or female. Don't do it. Text somebody if you're going to change maybe a location or if your plans have changed. Keep people in the loop. Keep people knowing where you are, and check in with other people as well. As much as we want people to support us, and we need to do that for others as well. And if we can create this circle of support where people are watching out for each other, that's a game changer in my book.
Well, the kids all have that find my friend.
Yeah.
They always know where their friends are. I think that is such an important piece of defense there.
Yeah.
The other one is the rideshare type of apps like Uber and Lyft. When you get into that car, they should be able to tell you your name.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all know that, but your kids know to ask these questions. And these are the types of things that if you're not going to pay for some kind of a self-defense class for your kids, we need to be having these discussions with our children.
Yeah. And again, here's a little tip about Lyft or Uber or whatever you're using. Take a picture of the license plate of that car, take a picture of the driver as you're getting in, and send it to somebody.
Ooh, love that. Wonderful.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If someone comes to pick you up and you have taken their photograph and they don't want you to, don't get in that car.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear indicator that something's up.
Absolutely.
Right?
This is such great information. My kids are 25 and 27, my children, but I mean, we've got 4 other kids and I worry about them equally.
Mm-hmm.
Just arming them with some practical tips is going to be paramount to their safety and just awareness. They're always down looking at their phones. It's like, look around you. Look at everything that's going around you. And honestly, we as adults need to do the same thing.
Definitely. And again, I go back to this analogy of driving a car. When we are in a driver's seat, we're noticing what's going on around us. We're watching the lights. We're watching the traffic. We're tuned into our environment. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a car accident. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get rear-ended or that somebody's going to cut us off. But if it does happen, we are alert to it quicker and can respond faster and are less likely to be harmed. It's the same as when we are walking down the street or walking through a park. If we are tuned in to what's going on around us, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a creep standing off to the side that's going to catcall us or try to grab us or send us a whistle or whatever that might be. But at least we are alert and aware and tuned in, and we can make a choice for our safety more quickly and more actively and more effectively than if we're got our heads in our phones and not even tuned into what's going on around us.
Great advice. Lorna, this has been delightful. I so appreciate your time today. I know our listeners are going to get a great deal of information from this. And this is going to be one of those shows I'm going to ask my listeners to share with their children because I want them to hear this as well.
I love it. Fantastic.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michelle.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.